You can follow me on any of the listed social media, and you can read my manga over on Pixiv. If you'd like to support me, then please consider subbing to my Patreon. Thank you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial video. In today's video, we're going to be going over something that I think a lot of people overlook, but can really help you in the long run. Okay? And that is the process of going from a rough sketch to your construction lines so that you give yourself the best chance of success at making meaningful, good hard lines, okay? So you need to remember that ideas are fleeting. So sometimes you might feel inspiration for a picture or whatever that's in the moment really good, but maybe you're at work, maybe you're going to bed, so you don't really have time to just sit down and draw. So what you need to do is you need to get good at being able to sketch the overall idea of a picture so that when you have time to draw it out later, you can grab that little sketch, whether it was on a sticky note or a napkin, whatever it might be. You can take it and you can then bring it to life, okay? So basically what I'm going to walk you through is the process here of how I go from a storyboard to the construction lines to help set up my line art for success, okay? So like always, I always like to use a lower opacity layer and with a red mark, okay? What this helps me do is it keeps it very, very distinct from my hard line. So if for whatever reason I accidentally come to this layer and I start, drawing with my hard line, I can see like, oh, wait a minute, this is gray, not black. Therefore, I'm on the wrong layer because this one has a lower opacity. But then on top of that, when I'm drawing over it, I don't want these lines, these construction lines to really get in my way. So keeping them a different color so they're easy to trace, but a low opacity means that when I draw over them, they're not, visually jarring. And it's just a lot easier to trace and see what my actual line is as opposed to what my construction line is. And even depending on how complex it is, you can use different colors as well during your construction phase. You can use blues and stuff and greens. You can do whatever you need to help you visualize and see the piece, okay? But before we even get to the construction line, maybe you need to get that little idea on the page, okay? So I'm going to show you a storyboard. Now, what do you see here? A whole lot of nothing. And that's because this is an idea just barfed onto a page so I can go do something else, okay? So when I'm storyboarding a chapter for a manga, what I do is I just do all the storyboards for that chapter in one go, one day, okay? So I've already written, what needs to happen in the story or in that chapter, and then what I'm trying to do is set the scene for each page and try to format it, okay? Because basically what happens is that when I come back to this later, and all this is trying to show me is where my characters are positioned. So obviously we have a central character here. This is the main character in this particular story. Then we've got these two over here who are the maids who are essentially helping this princess get ready, okay? And that's all this is trying to show. There's no unnecessary details. I drew a little face because it was funny. I drew a little mouth so I can see that this person's super happy. And I have a little note up here saying that, everything has come together. She's ready and she needs to look pretty in her dress, okay? That's all this sort of storyboard is supposed to encapsulate. And this is also what your sketch should encapsulate. You don't need to get bogged down in the details. You don't need to take 10, 15 minutes to make a perfect sketch. You just need to get your idea down. Because what will happen is that when you have them situated and you come back to this later, you might come up with a better idea because you can see what you had before and you can improve upon it. It's a lot harder to just improve upon something in the heat of the moment while you're forming the idea. So if you just sketch something quick down on the page, not only is it going to be there for you later, but also if you felt like you worked hard on the construction lines or even your line art, you might not be so willing to look at improvements or even think of ways to improve it because if I spent 2 hours on something and my time is limited, I don't really want to just throw it away, you know? Whereas this took like maybe a minute and a half, if that. So it's really easy to just get rid of this and do something else if a better idea comes along, okay? So the importance of a sketch is just to help you find your placeholders, your key facts. You can notate, have your little notes ready to go, and that's all it needs to be. Do not waste your time getting bogged down in the sketch. Now, from the sketch, we can then come along to the construction lines, okay? So this derpy little thing comes up to this, okay? And in here, what we end up doing is not only do I now figure out the weight and the anatomy of my characters and their positioning, and I map them on to what I had before. So again, I had already shown that in this one, I need my main character here in the center, and I've got my 2 maids over here helping her get ready, okay? And she's supposed to be all dressed up. So in this little construction line here, we can see my main character in the middle. She's dressed up, ready to go. We got our 2 maids over here helping her. And we've got a very enthusiastic one over here who's happy. So, but if you notice, I even have a background now. I have this mirror detail because she's looking into a mirror here. And I have all these little details that were not included in the sketch. And that is because all of these little things are just an absolute waste of time during the sketch process. However, for my construction line to help set my line art up for success, they are very necessary, okay? So whether you're doing a fan art or a manga of your own, that part doesn't really matter. Let's say most of you might be working on fan arts or making your own characters, your own OCs. You're gonna have either references or sheets where you have designed your character. So when you're doing a sketch, you don't need to sketch your character, you need to sketch a placeholder for a figure. So that when you come back to actually draw it, you're gonna map your character or the fan art over it, okay? So even things like the background here, you know, it's this drape, this picture frame, I have already designed and in different files have what the background of this room looks like. So all I have to do is then just sketch that in and make sure it looks nice in the finished product. But during the sketch here, I don't need to add it because I just know for a fact what is behind them. So I don't need to sketch it. I know what it's going to look like. I don't need a placeholder for it. So I'm not going to waste my time drawing it. Whereas here in the construction lines, you do need to take the time to do it to make sure that you can get the lines you want and it fits with your character. It's going to be mapped nicely. You don't want to leave that part up to chance. Okay. Now, for the construction lines, I still leave that, you know, low opacity layer so I can draw over them and my line doesn't get in the way or merge with them. But for the construction lines, you know, I do know that for me personally, I use a little bit more precision in my construction lines than most people will. For some artists, they might keep it real loose still and real messy and then just kind of sketch along. Like if you notice my head circles, the little placeholders there, those are pretty loose, they're pretty thick, but for the most part, during my process for construction lines, I'll erase and kind of clean things up because I'm not trying to get confused when I'm trying to draw over the character. So if something's super messy, I'm going to clean it up a little bit. And I think that for me, that it is important. Because what you can do is you can go through, you can really make sure that when I look at this, I know, okay, here's the line I need to trace for my line art. And it's like, here's the draw line I need to trace for my line art. There's not, you know, a whole lot of areas like this where there's just a jumble and I don't know where my line is. Because even through here, I know where it's at. But I think that what you can really do to help improve your line art is making sure you just have a distinct line to follow. Now, some people, they'll do that in a third step, which is then like adding a trace line. And if you're drawing traditionally and you don't have the power of the undo button and multiple layers, I think that's great because then you can really solidify for one last time, okay, this is the line I have to follow. So when you come through with like your pen or marker, whatever it is you're using to draw, you have a distinct, obvious line to follow. But I think if you're doing things digitally, you really don't need to waste your time on a third step. You can just, from the construction lines, go right into the line art. Okay? Now, if we pull up the line art, my background is in a different layer. And so during my work in progress pictures that I saved for like a short, I just didn't include it. So the background's there in spirit. So just trust me on that one. However, some things to take note is that if I go back and forth, you can see that there's very, very slight corrections and changes. So for example, this maid's face. Notice how her positioning slightly changes, things are cleaned up, her jawline's a little less distinct, so it's a little bit more feminine. There's a little bit more details added in that I might have forgotten the sketch, and that's because as you're working off and you're using your reference, or you're finding little things to improve and make better, you should just do that. So it's not that my construction lines are going to be perfect, but they're going to be good enough to where, for the most part, all I'm worried about is making sure that my line weight is good and I have, you know, definitive, sharp, distinct lines, okay? So when you find little corrections, go ahead and change them. Oftentimes, I'll make that correction in the construction lines. So like, for example, like this sleeve, I know for a fact that when I had looked at the reference to make sure everything was good, I noticed like, oh, this lady needs a sleeve. So I added that before I drew my hard lines. It's just when I saved the construction line from the file, it was pre-doing that, okay? So an important thing to keep in mind is that every stage, except for the sketch, you don't really need to worry about that. But for the construction lines, take a step back, take a look at it, make sure the weight is good, make sure the anatomy is good, make sure the positioning is good. Do any corrections you catch now to save yourself time in the future. And the same with the line art. Now, the less corrections we have to do to line art, the better, because things can get goofy real quick with the quality of the line art if you're doing a bunch of after the fact corrections. However, leaving something super jarring or just wrong is way worse in the long run than trying to fix it. And at every single stage, at every single step, it's going to get harder and harder to correct things and have it come out looking better, okay? So as often as you can, objectively look at your piece and see, okay, what needs to be fixed? Is the face symmetrical? Is the anatomy correct? Is the, you know, jaw correct? Is the carpet the way I want it? You know, whatever it may be, make your corrections. But you're not going to be able to get, you know, distinct, helpful hard lines unless you have a good construction layer to work off of. This is where you do the majority of your problem solving. This is where you do the majority of your positioning and the anatomy corrections and the weight. This is really where the piece, in my opinion, the stage gets set, okay? If you do not have good construction lines to follow, it's gonna make it really, really, really hard to have good line art. Now, as you grow as an artist and as you improve, you notice there's some pro artists out there that don't use construction lines. They just go right in with their G pen or whatever pen they use, and they can just draw. So there's people out there who can just draw this, and they don't need anything to guide them. And that's cool. When you're first starting out, that's not you. So I don't think you need to get bogged down and lost in trying to pursue that level of artistic ability when you're first starting. So be impressed by artists that can do that, but for a lot of us, stick to trying to make good construction lines so that when you get to your hard lines, you're just trying to trace and get good line weight. And that the less problems you have to solve here during the line art, the more you can just focus on getting good quality lines. So like I alluded to during this whole video and in the title, I really do believe that the secret to improving your art as a whole is this, two-step stage of having a sketch that just gets the idea down there. It sets the sort of scene. It helps you know what characters to use. You can have all the notes you need. This is a very simple page, so I only have one little note here, but in a full page, I will usually have one or more note per panel, just to help you understand what it is you saw in your head during that moment of inspiration, okay? You need to write them down. Ideas are fleeting. they are gonna go away. You're not gonna remember in the morning. If you're laying down to go to bed and you're like, oh, that's a great idea, I'll draw that tomorrow. No. You need to roll over, grab yourself your little, notepad or whatever, and just quick sketch something down there and leave some little notes. And then you can go to bed. Because when you wake up, you're not gonna remember it. But if you have something like this to jog your memory, that's gonna help a lot. So you need to have a sketch to just get the idea out there. It should take you sub 2 minutes to do. Don't waste time on it. You just need to have the overall idea in the notes. From there, you can go up to the construction lines. This is where you're gonna do your problem solving. And as you improve and get better, you're gonna get faster at this. For something like this, it maybe took me around 20 minutes to do. And again, I use more precise construction lines. So there's some people who can do their construction lines up to the level they're happy with, and it will be faster than 20 minutes. But for me, probably around 20 minutes to do this. And then that really is going to set the stage for you to nail your line art. Okay. So do not ignore the sketch or the construction lines. You need to be utilizing those, making sure that you get better at those to make better art in general. So hopefully you found this helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.